For those of you who haven't seen the show, La Casa de Papel, also called The Money Heist, is a show that first aired on Netflix May 2017. If you're not that familiar with the show, the plot of the show basically features a story about 10 robbers with different backgrounds who we get to follow as they battle with hostages on the inside while negotiating with the police on the outside. The robbers operate under the code names of capital cities, and throughout the course of the 22 episodes of Part 1 and Part 2, flashbacks reveal how the robbers were able to plan and execute the robbery under the professor. The professor, who is the leader of the heist, takes us through his plans and teaches us one or two things about human psychology. As most of you might find out, there are many interesting standout characters in the show, but today we're going to take a closer look at the charming and technically gifted Aníbal Cortés, also known as Rio, and what I believe we can learn from him from a psychological standpoint. Rio is described as being a young, introverted, and technically savvy young man. He's dreamy and intelligent. However, he's not very mature and has been identified as the weakest point of the group several times due to his high level of neuroticism and agreeableness. If we take a closer look at Rio's psychological profile with the help of the 5-factor model that is used to describe human personality, I'd personally predict that agreeableness and, to a lesser extent, openness would be Rio's most dominant psychological traits. Agreeableness is a fundamental personality trait that reflects the tendency to be very cooperative, polite, kind, and friendly. In addition to that, people high in agreeableness are more trusting, affectionate, altruistic, as well as other general pro-social behaviors. Other people who share this pro-social trait with Rio are particularly empathetic, able to show great concern for the welfare of others, and often first out to help those in need. These are great traits to have and should be embraced, but today we're going to take a close look at one of the shadow effects that it can cast, especially a shadow trait that Rio and to a lesser extent Denver exhibit a lot throughout this show, and the term for it is called psychological leaning. Psychological leaning is basically the act of leaning too much emotionally or psychologically on other people. When you lean too much psychologically or emotionally on other people or towards them, it's usually a sure sign of insecurity. It makes others feel uncomfortable and they may begin to resent the way you're laying on them, and they usually react by denying your heaviness upon them in order to get some mental or physical space. Rio does this several times throughout the show, and in subtle and less subtle ways, and in some cases, his leaning is justified and vehemently understood by the fact that he's in a desperate need of emotional support that he can't provide for himself, such as when he suffered post-traumatic stress disorder or when he was in need for someone to comfort him after breaking up with Tokyo. Having emotional or psychological needs are healthy and normal. As social animals, we all have needs. The reason you and I have needs is because social needs fuel our drive to connect with others. However, there's a difference between having needs and being needy. Neediness often occurs when you lack something inside of yourself and you force yourself to resort to the exterior world to get that lack or emptiness fulfilled instead of trying to regenerate and fill that need from within yourself. Emotions are triggered within you when you want something different from what you perceive that you got from a person or a group, or perhaps when you fear that what you want won't materialize. Your brain usually reacts by saying, I'm not enough the way I am, and I'm going to find a way to fill this gap within me at any cost. We can see Rio demonstrating this when he tries to make Tokyo his girlfriend, and to his own surprise is met with initial resistance.
What is it? I want you to know that I'm serious about you, and I completely understand that you're a little older, and it's possible you want something more serious. That's why I want to give you this. I didn't get you a ring because we're stuck in here. But when we get out of here, I'll get you a big-ass ring.
How do I tell you this? What we've got has been very good, okay? Awesome. Yeah, well, I don't think we're meant for each other.
His entire body language drops, and you can hear it in his voice, see it in his eyes. He has placed a bit too much, a bit too early in someone else's hands who would rather see him first learn how to be happy by himself before she allows herself to feel attracted and seduced by him. Side note, if attraction even is a choice or just something that happens remains to be discussed in another video. Just like Rio, our minds are always plotting different ways of getting what we need or trying to protect us from someone who wants to take our needs away. Our brains are constantly busy generating rationalizations to explain our reactions to our unmet needs in one way or another. Therefore, you are needy, I am needy, everyone you know is needy to a certain extent. All of us want to be seen, understood, feel cared for, and feel valued by others for what we offer. So given that, what I've learned from analyzing Rio and putting him side by side with someone like Marseille or Berlin is that the need that you and I feel inside doesn't have to control our feelings, thoughts, and behaviors. Instead, we can become the masters of our own needs instead of letting them control us. Normally, when people feel like someone is leaning on them psychologically, it rattles them, and usually, over a short period of time, animosity towards that person starts to build. Consciously and subliminally, they sense the weakness that the person's leaning creates. They don't like his or her self-indulgence, and that person's insecurity reminds them of their own vulnerability. Again, we can see this kind of reaction when Tokyo starts to pull away from Rio's efforts in Season 1 and Season 2. She starts to realize that all that charm and wit came from a place of lack of and obsession, and not from a healthy appreciation or desire. Psychological leaning robs people around us of energy and suffocates them. They're forced to either leave us hanging dry or carry us until we're able to stand on our own 2 feet, which demands an almost constant job of buying into our needs and emotions, when they would rather prefer to concentrate on their own problems, even if they don't say so explicitly. Alternatively, they accept the imposition of our ways, but then they feel like they can take advantage of us emotionally, sexually, or financially. In that case, they feel empowered to use us, deprecate us, or discredit us in some way. Remember, when our energy touches others, they subliminally know if they're weaker or stronger than us. It affects how they see you. Thus, an important first step in silent power is don't lean. It's obvious, but most people don't know it. The characters Berlin, Marseille, and Bogota are exceptional counterexamples of this. And it's not only how they speak, but also how they carry themselves throughout the heist that shows a level of maturity and self-reliance that is very attractive and reassuring to everyone around them. Sure, they're all older men, and that might also be why it's a bit unfair to hold Rio to the same standard, when they obviously differ in mental maturity. But psychological leaning isn't strictly bound to age. Other characters like Arturito prove that you can be an older person and still have somewhat of an underdeveloped emotional maturity. Now, you might be insisting that my point is invalid and actually contradictory to the eventual progression due to the fact that Rio eventually made Tokyo his girlfriend, even though he was being needy. You might even disagree that he was being needy to begin with, but as you can probably suspect, I have a response to that, and I would love to hear you weigh in on my response by telling me if you agree or disagree with me in the comment section down below. The reason why I still believe that Rio's psychological leaning is harmful even though he gets the prize is for the following reason. It doesn't matter if you win or lose, it matters how you play the game. Life is by a larger part a social game. But it's not only a social game or one single game, but more so a series of games, some that play out simultaneously with others. In the case of Rio, you might say that the game he has set up for himself is to win over Tokyo to be his girlfriend, thus winning the game. But winning over one girl and winning the game of life are not the same thing. At least not to me. Like I said earlier, life isn't a championship, but rather a series of championships over a larger span of time. So, in my opinion, a better aim would be to be a good contender in every series of possible games and hold yourself accountable to a level of standard that would benefit you now and later. And the way you do that is by developing your own character first and foremost. Character is in fact the actual strategy that would enable Rio to win the largest number of challenges across the largest possible span of time. So a part of that character building could entail learning how to take other people into consideration before pursuing or acting on something, but also learning how to regenerate positive emotions within instead of seeking fulfillment in others, or, as a general rule of thumb, learning how to have an interesting and enjoyable time by yourself. All of those examples teaches one to be reciprocal, self-sustaining, and not putting the ability to win one game or winning over one person above everything and everyone at all times.
I got distracted for a second. It was just a slip-up. Tokyo came in, all right? It won't happen again.
Now I get it. Everything comes down, once again, to an emotional matter.
We see countless of scenes where Rio is willing to risk the entire robbery plan that has taken years to perfect in order to get his short-term needs met.
There's a small difference between your love story and mine. I wasn't involved in a hostage situation, risking the lives of my partners.
He has also been prone to risking other people's lives in petty arguments and neglecting responsibilities that he has already agreed upon to take, which would also jeopardize the life of his teammates if he would continue to neglect them. Side note, I'm well aware that all members have at some point made a stupid mistake that could risk the entire robbery, but Rio and Tokyo have been far more prone to do so, and that's why I've chosen to put the spotlight on them in this particular video. My thoughts are that when you start to prioritize how you play the game of life well in the long term instead of focusing on whether you're losing or winning in the short term, you become much more enjoyable to collaborate with, and other people will want to naturally be a part of your life and help you along to reach your dreams. This was visible when we got to see Tokyo asking the crew to save Rio in season 4 compared to the professor asking for the same favor. When Tokyo asked the question, the intentions were riddled with short-sightedness, unfairness, and egotism, while when the professor posed the same question later to the group, everyone remembered how fair, dependable, charitable, and reliable the professor had been towards them in the past and were much more inclined to help him save Rio. So when I propose that in the end, it doesn't matter if you win or lose any single game, but rather how you play the game, what I'm basically asking myself not to forget is that life is not a single moment, but a series of moments, and what all of us are trying to do is to be likable enough so that people would want to invite us to future opportunities that allow us to share and experience a series of more pleasurable moments in life, thus having an enjoyable life. And in order to be in such a position, we need to practice the values that allow us to do well in life, both in the short term and in the long term. So what I've learned not to do by observing Rio is that you should never want to compromise your abilities to do well in life for the sake of winning a single game or a single moment. We should try to take a fresh look at things and decide if what you and I are pursuing actually makes sense tomorrow, next week, next year, and in 10 years. If what we are pursuing only makes sense in a framework of today and tomorrow, but perhaps not in a month or a year, then refraining from that action might be in our best interests. Going back to psychological leaning, when you're frantic for people, your needs have an air of desperation. They weaken you and push things away. However, when you're willing to walk away, you put yourself first. You turn your back to all the bad deals with the peace of mind that comes from knowing that there's a better deal out there, one that's just right for you when the moment is right. When something promising pops up and you get excited by it, even if it isn't the right fit, it can be very hard to walk away and be patient, heartbreaking even. But I believe that the more you do it, the stronger you become. Rio's neediness reminded me of the importance of being willing to walk away. I believe that it's important to be willing to wait, invest in yourself for the time being, and show yourself that you have the strength to go through rough times and be patient enough to wait for delayed gratification. So, to summarize my analysis, what can we learn and take away from having taken a closer look at Rio? 1. Before every deal, take a moment in the hall and remind yourself that you don't need it. If you don't get it, it doesn't bother you. If you get it, it will be under your terms and you won't pay too much. You know that things come and go and you're patient enough to wait for the right moment. In other words, you're not the one in your social group who would be willing to throw your friends or teammates under the bus to get a quick win. 2. If they pull back, you pull back. Keep the balance. When you're in love and crave someone, you've probably experienced that if this certain individual keeps his or her distance or retreats from you, your desire for them grows stronger. It's a natural human instinct. However, if this person advances too far away from you, your desire for them lessens or may dissipate completely. Observing Rio is a lesson in negotiation. When you're desperate for a deal and lean into it, you push it away and end up paying way more. 3. Last but not least, there's nothing wrong with having needs, but you should know the difference between having needs and being needy. It's an area in life that we should all aim to master. So learn from Rio and to a lesser extent Arturito and understand that people who lack self-control usually get into all sorts of trouble. Before I end this video, I would like to ask you, yes, you, for a small favor. If you find this breakdown even the slightest enjoyable or educational, I'd be glad if you expressed it by liking or commenting this video. I work very hard and I put a lot of effort into these videos, so I would really appreciate if you took the time to subscribe, but only if you actually think that these types of videos are engaging and, I don't know, funny or educational. I'm sure I haven't captured the entirety of Rio's psychological profile, and there's probably a bunch of you who don't agree with my analysis, and that's fine. Whether you disagree with me or not, I'd still like for you to comment your thoughts or phrase your own analysis down below, and let's have a discussion about it. Also, if you have seen the show already, don't forget to comment what your favorite moment or quote is. With that being said, again, if you like this type of videos, be sure to like the video and subscribe. Peace.